You see, I'm a simple college student living alone in an apartment. I was very enthusiastic about the release of Pokemon Heart Gold and Soul Silver here in the States. I purposely locked myself out of all media and the internet aside for school purposes. That means no 4chan, no VForum, no Bulbapedia, except I was so busy with the school year and being poor at the time, I wasn't able to buy Soul Silver on its launch date. After my school year ended, I ordered Soul Silver on Amazon. However, it would take a week for it to arrive. I decided that during that time, I would replay my Crystal version on my Game Boy Color. However, I realized that long ago my mom threw it away because I told her the save went dead, and I was very upset about it then. She also threw away my Silver version, so all I have is my Game Boy Color. As such, I set out to GameStop and bought a used Silver version, as it's the only Pokemon game left that they have for the Game Boy Color. $10. Fairly cheap. I went home and started up for a nostalgia trip. However, that's where things started getting bizarre, and most likely a reason why you read this. The Game Freak logo started up as normal, but just froze there. I thought the cart was just errored or something, so I turned it off and on. The same thing happened. I tried pressing A and start over and over, and all the buttons. Eventually, the logo vanished and there was a black screen for about 5 seconds. Suddenly, rather than going to the usual menu screen, I was already in the game in a previous save file, which was odd, as I was expecting all these cards to have been wiped by the poor battery. Either way, I wasn't complaining, as I would have chosen the continue option to see what the previous guy did anyways. First off, I checked his trainer information. His name was just ... He didn't have much originality. I checked his profile and apparently he had 999 hours and 99 minutes put into the game, with all 16 badges, 99,999 Pokédollars, and all 251 Pokemon on the Pokédex. Seeing that he apparently had Mew and Celebi logged also, I'm guessing he had to use a Game Boy Genie, was a really hardcore Pokemon player back then. I checked his Pokemon to see what of a hardcore team he had. To my surprise, I saw 5 unknowns and a 6 Pokemon named Hurry. I think that this must be some cruel joke by the person who last played this game, but I decided to check the profiles of those Pokemon anyway. As expected, they were different letters of unknown, all level 5. I was a bit shaky with my unknown alphabet at the time, but I identified the word spelled out to be leave. As for the 6th Pokemon, it turned out to be a Cyndaquil. Mind you, this is before they were individualized Pokemon icons. The Cyndaquil looked normal, but it was level 5 with only 1 HP left with only 2 attacks, Leer and Flash. I don't know why they named him Hurry. At the time, I just disregarded. The most serious thing was that despite my volume being at max, none of the Pokemon he had said their usual cries. Just pure silence. Having enough of the team, I closed it. I was parked at what appears to be a room inside Bellsprout Tower. However, for some reason, there were no NPCs around. Even more eerie was the pillar in the middle that didn't move at all, as if it was just leaning on its side. There was no music at all, and there was no exit or ladder, or at least I thought there wasn't. I walked around for a few minutes, but can't seem to find a way out. This was certainly not a room I'd seen in the Bellsprout Tower before. I tried checking my arms for an escape rope, but the bag was completely empty. There wasn't any wild Pokemon either. Finally, I managed to find a ladder which turned out to be behind the pillar. The screen turned black and the music finally started playing. I had a sudden chill as I recognized the melody I heard to be the theme when you listen to the radio at the Alpha Rooms where the Unknown are at. I immediately realized that it wasn't a loading transition, but rather I was in a dark room and would need flash. Before I took care of that though, I immediately checked my Pokemon gear to change the radio to something more pleasant. It turns out there was no radio card, or even a phone nor time cards. There was only a map in which Gold ... from earlier, I will call him Gold from now on, was just walking in a mist of black. I recall that Cyndaquil has Flash, so I turned off my Pokegear and made Cyndaquil use Flash. I didn't see any message saying Hurry has used Flash or anything like that. The room just became lit just like that. I soon regretted it. The room was a chilling blood red with a linear gray path heading south. The ladder I used to go up and down was not there anymore. I had no choice but to head south. The screen got darker every 20 steps I made until I finally made it to the end, which appears to be a sign. I read the sign, which said turn back now. Suddenly, I was asked to answer yes or no. There was no question asked. I chose yes, as I do not know what it was asking, and the screen went black again, making a ladder climb to sound. The unknown radio music stopped, and in a few seconds was replaced with the nice, creepy, pokey flute radio music. I was in another dark room, but I held my breath and used flash again. Suddenly said that Hurry has fainted, which was odd since I called that there was no status conditions like poison on him, and I clearly wasn't in the battle. I checked my Pokemon quickly and suddenly he's no longer in my party. In fact, after investigating, none of my Pokemon are there, but instead, all replaced with level 10 unknown. I did the same thing as before and spelled out the unknown. My then team of unknown spelled, he died. Either way, after that creepy change, the room was lit to reveal myself in a very small room that appears to be only 4 squares big. The walls of the room were gray brick, as if I was inside something that was hollowed out. Outside the room appears to be a bunch of graves similar to the ones in Pokemon Red and Blue. I walked around the small room, pressed A, but nothing happened. I've already concluded that this was clearly a hacked game, and some sadistic person sold it to the GameStop. However, my curiosity kept me going. I checked the trainer profile of ... again, only to find out that the sprite of Gold was missing his arms. He also seems to appear less smug, but rather seems more sad and empty in a way that I did not know how to describe. For some reason, it also said now that he had 24 badges, which was clearly impossible. After a few minutes of aimless wandering, my character suddenly spun around and did the escape rope spinning animation. Instead of flying upwards though, my character spun downwards slowly as if sinking. After that scream, the music stopped. After finally landing, the overworld sprite Gold is colored differently now. Instead of the usual red color he dons, he appears completely white now, including his skin. It's as if he came straight from the colorless Game Boy games, placing a colored background of the Game Boy Color. I checked his profile now, while now is as white as his overworld sprite. He lost his legs, and has what appears to be bloody tears from his eyes. It also says he now has 32 badges, which now starts to disturb me as the change in number seems to represent something important. I also checked my Pokemon, which this time contains 5 unknowns and a level 100 Celebi with a nickname. The unknown are this time leveled 15 and spelled out dying. I checked Celebi's profile. It was a shiny Celebi, except it was only half of the sprite. 1 leg, 1 arm, 1 eye. It only has 1 attack. Pierce Song. The area I was in itself was the Sprout Tower, the immobile pillar as before, except everything is apparently red now. I walked north for what felt like forever. Eventually, I finally encountered some generic men and women NPC. They were all lined up to the side, just facing a long, slanted pillar in the middle. They were also white, and nothing happens when I try to speak to them. I kept on going north until eventually the pillars finally appears chopped off, the transparent red in that spot. I went up to red, and without even pressing A, I was suddenly engaged, and finally in a battle. The music starts again, which sounds like the unknown radio music again, but played backwards. Gold's back sprite matches his front one with the bloody eyes, white skin, and a lack of arms, while red sprite was the same as before in gold, silver, and crystal, except transparent. The text simply said, "Wants to battle," as if he has no name, and both of us only have 1 Pokemon each, which is weird, as I swore I had 6 with the unknowns. My shiny Celebi came out conveniently with a half a sprite for the back sprite also. Shiny noise and animation were different. The shiny noise and animation was different, as the sounds it made sound like multiple screech attacks used consecutively. Red sent out a seemingly normal male Pikachu, except his level is 255, and his sprite seems sad and has tears in his eyes. Rather than the usual fight, item, Pokemon, run menu, I was only given the option to use the attacks. Since Celebi only has one, I chose it. Naturally, since Pikachu was level 255, he went first. Pikachu used Curse, lowering his speed and increasing his other attack. Pikachu used Curse, lowering his speed and increasing his other stats. I'm not even sure if Pikachu could use Curse. Celebi used Perish Song. In 3 turns, both Pokemon get knocked out. Not like I have a choice. At this point, it didn't even go back to the fight menu as the battle just continued without me. Also, there was no animations at all for some reason. Pikachu used Flail, which didn't do much damage despite his level and boost as his health was maxed. Celebi used Perish Song. Nothing happens as if Celebi used Perish Song. Nothing happens as it was already used. Pikachu used Frustration, which did a ton of damage, knocking Celebi down to less than 10 HP. Celebi used Plane Split, which surprised me as Celebi didn't even have that attack in the first place. Now Celebi and Pikachu have about 150 HP. Pikachu used Mean Look. Not like that did anything. As expected, due to the effects of Perish Song, my Celebi fainted. Except in the text it said Celebi has died. And instead of the ordinary drop of the screen animation, the Celebi back sprite just vanished. For some reason, the Pikachu was still up, even with Perish Song, and it didn't count as my loss. Pikachu used one more different attack beyond the 5 attack limit. Pikachu used Destiny Bond. Afterwards, it said Pikachu has died, with a slow fade out animation. Apparently I was the winner, as a transparent red sprite showed up and said, ... At that point, I just freaked out, as the transparent red sprite was suddenly beheaded, leaving nothing but his transparent body. The battle then ended at that point and faded out along with the music. I'm back in the overworld, with another change to the gold sprite. He's now as transparent as Red's overworld sprite. I quickly checked Gold's profile, where this time the only thing remains of him is his head with a transparent skin. The head was zoomed in a bit, showing black voids in his eyes. It now stated that he now has 40 badges. Backed out checking my Pokemon. They were all level 20 Shiny Unknown, which when spelled out, read no more. I was at what I now know is next to the end. There was apparently no music playing, but for some reason, I still felt like something was there that could be heard. I was back in my room in New Barktown. Maybe finally I get to play this game properly. But who am I kidding? I knew that sadistic person must have done something. Walked around my room to interact with things, as I'm a bit afraid to go downstairs to see what was waiting for me. No, I said walked, as while the background was moving, Gold was not moving his transparent limbs at all while doing so, just floating like the ghost you see in Diamond and Pearl. As expected, the radio, computer, and TV did not work, so I had no choice but to go downstairs. I ended up in the same lower level room of my house. Everything appears normal except Mom isn't home. After failing to interact with anything in this room, I decided to go outside. To my surprise, the door leading outside at the south didn't work, and instead I just walked straight through it to a void. I continued moving south to see what the heck was going on. My house vanishes as I head south into the void. It was creepy as when I entered the void. The outline on Gold's transparent sprite turned white to contrast with the pitch black. Eventually, I reached a white area and Gold's sprite turned black and transparent again. I continued south without thinking of stopping at all. After a long trek south, I finally encountered something. It was Gold's regular sprite. I talked to it. He said goodbye forever, notably with a space in between the forever and ... and vanished. As that happened, it said, use Nightmare, which at that point, I would not deny that being impossible. Gold did another escape rope animation spinning slowly downwards like before. Now I'm back into that small hollowed out room surrounded by graves earlier. At least I say I was back there as there was no sprite anymore. I tried to walk around but nothing moved. Not even wall bumping noise. I checked my train profile with absolutely no gold sprite left. It said I had 0 badges, and all the pictures of the Johto gym leaders at the bottom were replaced with skulls. I checked my Pokemon, which were all level 25 unknown. As expected, it spelled out the phrase that I dared to read. I'm dead. As soon as I went back to the overworld, where I supposedly was in then was covered with the same blocks as the walls. I then figured out what exactly that room was when the final text was said. Rest in peace, ... The room was a big grave, surrounded by other graves. Gold has already been dead. He died presumably a few years after he defeated Red. He was a young trainer who, despite his efforts in collecting so many badges and attempts at becoming a Pokemon Master, was still unable to avoid the inevitable fate of death, and his efforts were eventually forgotten by the next generation. I was unable to escape from that text no matter what I pressed. I tried resetting the game, and the same thing happened, at which I then finally decided to give up on that horrible nightmare. After the experience, I will never look at that gimmick unknown the same way again. They say that only the first generation have folk tales and legends, but the second generation has shown me how unpleasant the truth can be. I eventually enjoyed Soul Silver immensely, but I still can't unthink what the rigged game has told me.